So we have a guy coming out here who used to work for Xbox, and he was the guy that would call you names on your headset when you were losing in Halo. So, introducing Stephen Toulouse.
I don't get to have a pie on my face. I'm a little disappointed. Maybe backstage I'll take care of it. Actually, to be clear, I wasn't the guy who, at Microsoft at Xbox, I didn't yell at you about how you played Halo. I just banned you. That was my job. But I played a lot of video games, and I worked at the Microsoft Corporation for 18 years.
Wow.
It's a long time. No, it is a long time. There's no kind of about it. And I wrote a book about that called Microsoft Life, which you can actually pick up at the Merch Center. But I'm going to read you a story from that book, which the book overall talks a lot about my time at Microsoft. There's some funny stories, there's some interesting stories, there's some one or two sad stories, because it's a long one. This one's going to be a funny story. And it basically has to do a lot with how hard it is to actually navigate the buildings inside the Microsoft campus. Has anyone ever been to the Microsoft campus? So we have some inside the buildings and all that. Yes, so this is basically a story called A Maze of Twisty Passages, All Alike. I have some slides, don't bring it up just yet, I'll cue. And they have to do with some signs that are scattered throughout the building. And yes, you may go ahead and delight in the irony of an 18-year Microsoft employee reading from his beloved iPad. There's a surface, it's coming, shush. Just talked about it the other day. I still prefer my iPad. So know this, after my 15 years at the company, I can say it's a fact. Microsoft's developers, software executives, employees' actions are not, and never have been, intentionally evil. Microsoft's building designers, however, are. Actually, that's not fair. The designers are just doing what they're told. They're maximizing the available space for working environments, all within a budget. But the sign people, inside the building where you see the signs of where you're supposed to go, the people who design those, they're evil. It's bad enough that from the top-down X-ray view, every Microsoft building resembles a maze from one of those 1001 mazes that you see at the checkout at the grocery store. It's bad enough that even inside some Microsoft buildings, the first floor is designed completely differently from the second floor. And the third floor bends space and time such that I swear I once saw David Bowie walking on the ceiling. These things alone would be villainy. What is worse, far worse, is the fact that all the interior signs helpfully lead you right like a lamb to the slaughterhouse, but the signs end up leaving you just short of it, wondering if you missed a sign. And by the way, what's with all the lambs screaming? Here's an example. To be mindful of Microsoft's security protocols, which restrict employees from taking photos of our buildings with the level of detail that I'm about to describe, I am going to instead provide you with an approximation of the hell we had to go through trying to find our way around. Setting the mood. You're in an unfamiliar building for a meeting. You've arrived with more than 5 minutes to spare, plenty of time. You exit the elevator and are greeted with this initial sign. You know that your meeting is in conference room 2576. So you exit the elevator to the right, intending to go to the kitchen to grab a drink because it's on your way. You walk down the hall to the next sign, which says, "That's odd, you think. Where did 2576 go?" Well, I'm sure there's another sign near the kitchen, you decide. So you enter the kitchen and you grab a coffee. Microsoft is filled with these Starbucks coffee machines that brew your coffee from like a custom grind. It takes about 90 seconds. But you figure you have plenty of time. Coffee now accomplished, you exit the far side of the building to find this sign. Oh, you think, see, there it is. You continue down the hall. You now only have a minute or two before your meeting. So you scan for the next sign and see You're momentarily surprised that the restroom has now folded space to move in front of you. But you realize that certainly there would be more than one restroom on the floor. But then you pause to realize the conference rooms have disappeared from the sign to be replaced by the office supply room. Now you're completely confused, because the last sign had a room range of 2,300 to 2,400, but this new one expands that to 2,491 and sends you in a completely different direction from the other rooms. Neither room range matches the conference room that you're trying to get to. Figuring that surely a conference room like 2576 would be in the general direction of the increasingly large numbered offices, you proceed gamely in the direction of the 2350 to 2491 range. Your meeting, by the way, has now officially started when you reach 2491 down some long, deserted hallway and stumble across conference room 2999, filled with people you do not know. On the door is a sticker that says, "Meeting moved to conference room 2202, by the stairs." Now people in the offices around 2999 are kind of looking at you because you probably just uttered out loud, "You've got to be fracking kidding me." Your smartphone, watch, internal timing mechanism informs you that you are now 3 minutes late to your meeting. You hustle back down the hallway to the sign you last passed, only to see that totally different signs are posted facing the other way. Sorry. Okay, now you're 6 minutes late and you still have no idea where you are in the building. You get a text message on your phone from your boss or other helpful coworker trying to protect your reputation as not being one of those people who's always arriving late to a meeting. The message states, "VP is here, we're all waiting for you to start." The VP, the vice president of the division, is there. "Oh my God," you may or may not exclaim as you run back to the elevator. On the way, you pass conference room 2202. In your haste and panic, you think you recognize a friend of yours in 2202 who's supposed to be at your meeting. But that can't be because yours is in 2576. Maybe they just had a more important meeting in 2202 and couldn't make it to yours. Regardless, you're now 7 minutes late and you need to find 2576. Headed in the opposite direction from the elevator's initial sign, you find 5 feet away, with no sign pointing to it whatsoever, the conference room you need, 2576. It is filled with people you do not know. There is a sticker on it saying, "Your meeting, moved to 2999, which you remember had a sticker on it saying it was moved to room 2202, which you just passed, and now realize it is filled with your friend, the people for your meeting, and the vice president of your division. You may or may not, at this point, scream out loud, "Motherfucker!" and run immediately to the building, to the room, forsaking signs altogether. You try as nonchalantly as possible to open the door and enter, saying carefully and slightly breathlessly, "My apologies for being late. I couldn't find the room." The vice president looks you up and down and says, "But had enough free time to get some coffee, I see." The signing situation at Microsoft is so pervasive that among some employees, if you want to send a passive-aggressive signal about who needs the meeting more than you make all the invitees come to your building. Likewise, if you need to make peace or resolve a conflict that you think you might be wrong about, you schedule the meeting in their building as a peace offering. Really. But I didn't come to talk just about Microsoft. I like to talk about a lot of nerd, geek topics. And I know, right? Like you do. And Caleb knows what I'm talking about. I want to talk about something that's, it's something I've been putting a lot of thought into. I just recently left Microsoft in February, so 18 years in the corporate world. Brings with you a lot of unique experiences that most people don't really think about talking about to people. Especially in a crowd of fellow geeks and nerds. And so I thought I'd think about some of those things that just normally don't come across in conversation. Like pooping at work. Now, being nerds and geeks, we're kind of particular people. We're sometimes socially awkward penguins. And one of the things that I always found really unusual about that type of situation in a corporate environment was how consistently certain scenarios came up. So let me set the stage for you. Now, I'm going to speak from the male perspective. Ladies, your restroom is much like your purse to us. It is a mystery, a magical place that we don't understand. There's probably candles, tasteful wallpaper. You walk into the standard corporate men's bathroom, and because it's run by a staff, it's pristine, it's very clean, but it's very sterile. There's usually some black granite countertops, white walls, gray stalls, a couple of urinals. Typically the configuration is 2 urinals and 3 stalls, one being the handicap stall, or as most of us like to call it, the super luxurious upgrade stall. It's really big. Now, best case scenario, you walk into the men's restroom needing to poop. No one's in there. Best case scenario, go for it. Some other scenarios, however, typically come into play. And this is where the observant geek always comes to the eye always matters. You walk in and you see that some of the doors are open and some of the doors are closed. You know that people are in the closed ones. Not everybody knows this, which will bring me to a couple of people that we will discuss, right? Let's say you go in and there's an open stall, you go in, you close the door, going to begin your business, very private moment. You'll find that there's always a couple of people who don't follow your same rules. The first one is the one I like to call the juggernaut. The juggernaut walks into the men's restroom and sees all 3 doors are closed. Now, I look at that scenario and I say all 3 stalls are occupied. Juggernaut looks at that scenario and says the doors must be stuck. Walks into the bathroom and right into it. Just the first one he comes to. Oh, it must be stuck. Occupied! You're trying to brace him with your door. You can't, because he's trying to get in. So you scream, occupied, occupied. This happens more often than you would think. There is literally that person who walks into the men's restroom in a lot of environments and says, I'm getting in. Another one of my favorites is the beholder. The beholder is smart enough to know that the door is closed. Therefore, you probably don't want to just bust it in. So instead you get the eye that just floats in that little gap in the door. And you're like, you're sitting there and you're like, do I say something? That dude's looking at me for a long time. Far past the time that they should be able to determine I'm in here. I have found the cure for constipation. The cure for constipation is the scenario where you are in the stall, sitting down. The latch is not as strong as it could be, and the juggernaut busts right on in. I credit myself with that discovery. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thought I'd come out and make you laugh a little bit.